1078 officer in need.
What's up, guys? It's Matt from the 1078 Project. Hey, if you're new to the organization, a little bit about us. The 1078 Project is a non-profit organization that's been founded and developed by law enforcement officers who have been involved in critical incidents and officer-involved shootings. Our goal at the 1078 Project is to provide mental, spiritual, and practical support to law enforcement officers as they navigate the difficult times surrounding an officer-involved shooting. With that being said, let's dive into today's episode, and I'll see you on the other side, boys. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the 1078 Project podcast. Today's guest is an entrepreneur. He's a 30-year police veteran. He has a master's degree from Boston University. He specializes in police tactics and PTSD and plant-based medicines. He's a former Atlanta police officer and a New York area police officer. Today's guest is Michael Morgan.
Specifically one call, my partner and I, we had adjoining sectors, different cars, we're together, and dispatch tells him to call her, calls up. She's like, here's a number from a detective, Myrtle Beach PD. You have a death notification, call him up. So call him up. Kid on spring break was trying to jump from one balcony to the next and fell to his death. So now we got to go deliver this news to the family. So we're looking at each other and we just dap it up like, brother, I got your back. So we go. And the family knew something was going on. I forgot why, but we turned the corner and the father's coming out of the house, sees both cars pulling up, just drops to the ground prostrate, just screaming, crying, banging the cement. We stand him up. It's the worst feeling in the world. Take him inside. He screams for his wife and his daughter. They come downstairs, and I forgot the kid's name. He's like, Jimmy's dead. Jimmy's dead. Just over and over. Then you just trying to hold it together. You know, you cannot break down in front of these people, and you just say hyper focused. You don't even think about this kid as a kid, man. Hyper focused. And we were with this family like an hour and a half, 2 hours. You know, we were not leaving them until they were okay. I think relatives came over, and it was things like that. And in fact, with the story I just told about 2-year-old drowning, to go back to that, myself and another guy responded at the same time. He was a fire chief and a police officer, thank God. So when I got there, I'm like, thank God Billy's here because Billy can handle this with me. And we resuscitated her, handed her off to the ambulance. The parents went, we split. But what happened was there was a party, family party going on. And the grandparents were kind of responsible for watching the kids. All of the kids went downstairs back in the basement. But the baby, the 2-year-old, knew about some access door that no one thought she could get out of. But these kids are amazing, man. Unfortunately, she did. And she went in that pool, and they had no idea how long she was in there for, but she was floating. And for 3 hours, I had to stay at that house and listen to those grandparents.
Did I feel you, man?
Still gets to me. So that was like some of the most visceral crying I ever heard in my life because they were blaming her themselves and they did nothing wrong, but I had to listen to that. And I remember at one point I was going to go by that pool behind the bushes and I was about to lose it, man. I just felt my eyes welling up. And I'm like, literally, I said to myself, you fucking pussy, you can't cry. These people can't see you cry. When had I done so, it probably would have been the best thing I could have done for me. But I held it together and stayed there and buried that one as quick as I could. And the next day, the department sent the chaplain to speak to me. You know, I thank him for that. It wasn't nearly enough, but the chaplain and I had a long talk about it. And I'm like, I just don't understand why God would let this baby live again if she was dead for so many minutes. And, you know, she had a hypoxic brain injury. She's since made like a miraculous recovery, but you know, she's still got a lot of obstacles. But I don't. I'm like, I don't understand. I'm like, and I was pissed off at God, I guess. And he's like, listen, I understand, Mike, exactly what you're saying. He's like, but think about it this way: if she's going to pass or leave, at least you're giving the family time to grieve. And if not, you know, it's God's will. It's nothing that you have a say in. I'm like, yeah, I understand that, Father, but why would you let her live like that? And it was weird. I had like guilt for saving her, which wasn't mine to have, number one, because her family, she ended up obviously surviving. Her family was so appreciative and loving, and they always invited me back to the house. I couldn't do so. I went in one time and I said never again. I used to make excuses why I couldn't go in because there was two crackheads that lived across the street, so I was always on the across the street. But I wanted to kill those two, to be honest with you, because every time I had to go there, the family would come out and ask me to come in.
Mm.
But you know, I had a lot of trouble with that one and buried it deeply. And you know, when talking to guys now, like I tell them, best thing I could have done was go and cry. If I
Yeah.
lost it, it would have been the most cathartic thing I could have done, but couldn't do it. And yeah, that one hit me hard. I've actually reestablished contact with the family.
No way.
A couple of months ago, I sat down and wrote like a 4-page letter to the family, and you know, told them the whole story. Told them, you know, I started feeling guilt about saving her. Then I had guilt on having guilt about saving her. And the worst thing was a couple months later, I get a notification about an award for saving her. I'm like, I don't want a fucking award for this. And I remember I told me and my wife, now my second wife, started dating. I'm like, I don't want to go to this. And I felt so disrespectful to turn it down because it wasn't just me; it was the whole crew
Yeah.
that saved her. And that whole night, I'm thinking, why am I here, man? I should not be here. I should not be here. And I felt so guilty about that award. And we just such a dynamic mix of emotions. And never really spoke to anyone about it. But I poured my heart out in that letter to them, and you know, they were very thankful. And you know, I told them, I said, listen, I told them, you know, we're going to talk about it further, but you know, my life now is dedicated to helping first responders and vets with PTSD and traumas. I'm like, that podcast changed the trajectory of my life. Your daughter changed the trajectory of my life. Your daughter has saved people's lives through me. Even in a little amount of time I've started doing this, I started in March. I'm like, she is changing lives through me. I'm like, it was the universe's plan. I'm like, I didn't know it at the
Post-traumatic
time.
growth.
Yeah. I'm like, the universe put me in your house on that day. I'm like, it took years to understand why, but I do know now why I was there. It was supposed to happen.
Let's jump into it. Let's jump into what you're doing now and
Yeah.
how you've kind of wrapped that thing up, because this really, you know, that story is very true to you know, my story and what happened with my shooting, and now what we're doing with 1078. And you know, I've always asked myself the same questions of, you know, when I'm a pretty religious person, and you know, I try and have regular conversations with God, and that was a question that I kept asking myself is, man, why? Why is this? You know, I know you put me there, and I know I was there for a reason, but what's that reason? You know, and what are you asking of me, and how are you preparing me, right? And I always went back to, in the Bible, it talks like David, future King David, but little young David, goes to fight Goliath, and he's talking to the king, trying to tell the king, hey, let me fight him. Let me fight him. And they're laughing him off because he's a young kid. And he says, listen, God hasn't forsaken me. He didn't, you know, I fought the lion. I fought the bear, and God has never forsaken me. He's not going to forsake me against this guy. And I kept coming up to me and coming up to me and coming up to me. And I always felt like, man, God put me in this situation. He's never failed me yet. What am I supposed to do with this? And how am I supposed to, what will be the legacy of this? Right.
Yep.
And the legacy became 1078. And I feel like this is kind of where you're going with all these things that have happened with your career and being on the call. As unfortunate as it was, you felt like you were there for a reason, and it led you to do what you're doing now. So let's jump into that.
Absolutely. So I'll backtrack to watching that Sean Ryan video. When I realized that PTSD, I realized I needed help, and I didn't think traditional therapy was going to do it for me. I'm like, I don't think talking to a man or woman sitting behind a desk, telling what I did, what I've done, what I've seen, is just going to work for me. I don't, you know, it just, for me, I just didn't think it was the way to go. And I had been seeing on Sean Ryan's podcast all these special force operators coming back, broken men from war. And, you know, substance abuse issues, anger issues, depression issues, TBIs, but they were all talking about healing through these plant-based medicines. And I would say I was pessimistic. I just didn't think they were for me. And then I'm like, you know what? Maybe they are for me. And I started researching it more and more. And ayahuasca being specifically the one that I was thinking about, and decided, I'm like, I have to try it. So there was a center in Orlando, and my wife and I, we moved down to Florida last December. We During the course of the move, my wife loves researching. She found this facility, and we went down for a weekend. So we went down on a Friday. It was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday retreat. It was a ceremony in which you drink ayahuasca 3 times: Friday night, Saturday day, Saturday night, and it was the most profound, cathartic experience of my life. I mean, I literally changed everything about me as a person, as a man. It's hard to describe. I'll try to do so. I always say every time I start talking about it, dilutes the magic.
Let's start with what ayahuasca is.
Yeah. So ayahuasca is 2 vines that are found in the Amazon forest. Now, the incredible thing about it, there are 80,000 vines in the Amazon forest. You need to use both of these with each other. If you use one or the other, it's inert. So one gives you the psychedelic effects. I think it's Basterius. It's a long Latin name. I have to memorize this name. And the other one is an MAO inhibitor. So if you don't take the MAO inhibitor, the psychedelic effects don't work from the first. And essentially, it's DMT is the active psychedelic that causes hallucinations or your psychedelic experience. And it's, I think, the most powerful hallucinogen in the psychedelic in the world. It's been used for centuries. All the indigenous people used it in the Amazon. I consider it to be a very, very sacred thing, very sacred medicine. And, essentially it transports you to another dimension, if you will. And, tribes have used it to reach higher consciousness. Here in the West, it's more being used for healing traumas, whatever type of trauma it may be, addiction issues. And, some people just want to kind of reach a higher consciousness. But
did you have apprehensions? Because from a cop's perspective, I can think to myself, my apprehensions with ayahuasca would be like, am I doing this for why am I doing this? I guess is the question. Like, did you have apprehensions on like, hey man, am I just doing this to get high? Am I doing this like, what were your apprehensions?
No. Yeah, first of all, it's not a drug. So I should have said that first. People think it's a drug. First of all, it's a plant-based medicine. This is not something that gets you euphoric. It is the furthest thing from something.
That's what I've heard.
That's an enjoyable experience. Like,
yeah, I've heard it's
people go through
gnarly.
Profound pain to come out the other side. I mean, you'll hear screaming, you'll hear crying. The journey sometimes is very painful en route to your healing, and it's actually it's on the controlled substances list as a Schedule 1, which is disgusting, and it is only there because the pharmaceutical companies know it is so effective, and they do not want it in the hands of people. Let me tell you something right now, Matt. If everyone in the world drank ayahuasca, there would be no wars. The world would just be a more loving place, man. It changes you in ways you can't even imagine. And that's what these guys were saying. And I still was a little pessimistic. I'm like, I can't believe this. And I was nervous going into it. You have no idea what to expect. In some respects, I'm like, man, is this gonna like snap something inside me? I'm gonna stay like that. Nothing like that. Nothing of the sort.
But to get back to it, what were your hopes?
My hopes
going into it, what did you want to address, and what were the desired outcomes?
I wanted to get rid of my anger. I wanted to get rid of my rage. I wanted to get rid of the depression I was going through. I guess I wanted to settle some issues. My father had passed in 2020, so I guess I wanted to put to rest some of the things, the anger I had towards him. Get rid of my PTSD. I guess that pretty much sums up what I was looking for. And they say that the medicine doesn't give you what you want; it gives you what you need. So you have no idea where it's going to take you. And I've journeyed with it 7 times, and each time could be vastly different. I've only had like super psychedelic experience where I was having hallucinations twice. Um, the other 5 were great experiences, but it wasn't like I was seeing things like, a couple of times the universe was literally talking to me, as funny as it sounds. And if I had said this 5 years ago, I'd probably punch myself in the face. But literally, I mean, the universe is talking to me.
Dude, this stuff
And
intrigues me so much.
it's incredible. I recommend it to everyone in law enforcement. It should be a yearly thing. When you guys are restarting or whatever you have to do as far as going in service training, you should have to drink ayahuasca. The police force would be so much better, empathetic. It's just incredible what it does. And to get back to your point, what you do with the vines is they kind of beat them down with rubber mallets,
Mhm.
boil them, and using the juices after they take out the impurities, you're drinking the juice from these 2 vines. That's all it is. There's nothing else. There's no manufacturing process. You're just boiling 2 vines. So you essentially drink it. It's again very sacred. Um, they have ceremonies that these facilities do, dances, chants, some prayers, and essentially once you drink it, you kind of sit around. Everyone's waiting for it to kick in. The first time I drank, it probably took about 45 minutes. So about 35 minutes, I'm looking at my watch. I'm getting pissed off. I'm like, all this, and it's not going to work. And all of a sudden, the ground started moving. I'm like, all right, here we go. And to describe my first experience, it's almost like I was looking at a big screen TV. And most people sense a female presence. They call a mother ayahuasca. And that's exactly what I felt. I felt like a female, like shaman, essentially, was in the left-hand corner of my TV screen. And, I literally was just like, I put my hands up and I'm like, I surrender to you. I remember I had like tears running down my cheeks. I'm like, I need to lose this anger and this rage. I'm like, you need to take away my ego. And like everything I asked for, when I asked for it, was granted. I could just feel myself getting lighter and lighter and lighter. And at one point, I'm watching the workers, the volunteers, and they're so like gracious and loving. They're there for anything we need. And I'm like, I want to be more like them. I want to be more empathetic, more loving. And I just like felt like this empathy kind of coming into my being. I can't describe it any other way. I remember one of the workers kind of walked by me, and I'm like, I don't know where that motherfucker's going. And I'm like, why you just call him motherfucker? Like, you couldn't have said that guy. And I'm like, and then I'm like kind of talking to myself, like, man, dude, you're like changing. It was the weirdest thing. And at one point, she was bringing my father to me in my journey, and it was crazy because the music is there's almost like new age music playing in the space, and in my journey, the music is getting louder and louder. Reality was not, and it built this crescendo. Reality did not, and it just stopped. Reality, it's still going on, but deep in this vision, and it was almost like I was in the front of the brightest marquee in Vegas, and I could feel people behind me, like it's a showdown between me and my dad. No fight, just like a mental showdown. And I'm waiting, 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 and he just doesn't show. And I throw my hands in the air. I'm like, fucking coward. I knew he wouldn't show. Cannot talk about his feelings. But literally, at the time, I was 54, 55, like, oh, yeah, 55. 55 years of everything between he and I just got like lifted off of me. Like, I felt so light in that moment. I cannot describe it to you. And now when I think about things between he and I, there's no longer like an emotional charge to those memories. The memories are still there, but the anger and resentment that were with them, used to always accompany them, are gone.
Mhm.
I'm trying to think what else. I mean, this is like the universe or Mother Ayahuasca talking to me. She's like, you're a warrior. You'll always be a warrior. But that fire that was up here with all that anger and rage that you always used to need is no longer needed. She's like, it's down here now. If you ever need it, you can always call on it. But she's like, you don't need it. She's like, you're not that thing anymore. She's like, you did your time. Done.
Man.
I still get emotional about that sometimes. And
Woo.
like, bro, like this peace just came over me. Like, I put it to rest, man. No
So
longer,
heavy.
yeah, man. Like, I'm no longer a cop, and I'm at peace with it. Like, literally peace. And it just happened like instantaneously. And I'm trying to think what else happened. Well, Let me preface by saying prior to this, 3 weeks before, two of my friends and workmates from Suffolk County PD committed suicide a week apart. Sergeant killed himself in a precinct locker room 2 days before he was about to make lieutenant too. And I never had any thoughts about getting into the space, but as I'm coming out of it, the universe told me you were healed, and healing's not linear, man. It's still ebb and flow, but
Yeah.
essentially I was healed from that PTSD. And the universe told me, it's clear as you and I talking, your life's pursuit is to go forth and help other vets and first responders heal themselves from PTSD and trauma. And I literally said out loud, okay, just accepted it, man. That was it. Wasn't sure how I was going to implement it. Wasn't sure what I was going to do. Nothing, but I'm like, got my life's purpose. And it was funny because another guy that had been sitting next to me went into like a quiet room. And when he was done, he came back out. He's like, how was your journey? And I'm like, good, brother. I'm like, universe has told me what the rest of my life's about. He's like, oh, that's a good journey. I'm like, absolutely. And that's it, man. Became clear as day that was what I was supposed to do for the rest of my life. And since I've journeyed with it, I had another one the second time that I had like a psychedelic experience. It was the most intense night of my life. Same facility. They have a fire kind of in the middle of the ceremonial space, a big fire pit. And I was staring at that fire so intensely. I had a shirt on and a sweatshirt. And next thing I know, I look at my arms and I see my tats. I'm like, what the hell are my clothes? And I'm sitting there shirtless. And I never, ever walk around shirtless, basically, even in my own house. I don't know. I never do. And I was sitting there shirtless and I got up. There was a space heater behind me and I was literally inches from it. It should have been like burning me. And it was like fueling my soul. And I remember like I had my arms wide open and I'm looking to the sky and the universe and I were talking and the universe was like, I put you through every single thing. I put you through your life for a purpose to put you here. So you have credibility when you walk in a room and you talk to these men and women. They know you're not just talking the talk, you fucking walk the walk. And the universe. I'm saying this as humbly as can be. There's no arrogance. Like the universe is like, I made you as big as you are, so you walk in there and they listen to you. When you get vulnerable and talk to them, they are going to understand that if you can, be vulnerable and feel that it is a sign of strength. It was exactly what DJ Shipley told me. It was so weird, and literally, it just kept saying, I put you through everything. The worst things you've gone through in your life are for a reason. You are here because of that. And you are here to go forth and tell them and to help them. And it was nuts. It was so intense. I had multiple people the next day. One guy's like, hey, bro, can I tell you something? He's like, this ain't K. He's like, I could not stop staring at you. He's like, I've never seen a more intense person in my life. And I had, I think, 4 people come up to me like, I've never seen an intensity like that in anyone. And after it was over and I came out from medicine, it took like 3 hours to like calm down. Like I can't even tell you, there was no anger, there was no rage. It was intensity like I've never experienced in my life. And it just solidified the fact that I'm supposed to be on this path doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, man. So cool. I think ayahuasca is one of those things that everybody that I have ever heard talk about it always talks about it like it's so life-changing. But it's like it seems to be like a subculture. And you may be right. Maybe it is because it's very healing and, there are very powerful people that don't want that to make its way out.
Yeah, think so. And there's a revolution coming. Excuse me. There is a revolution with psychedelics coming. I guarantee it. Everyone's seeing what they do because of all these men and women that just came out of a war. And that's really why it's coming to the forefront. Ibogaine is another super, super strong one. I want to journey with that. There are very few places in the U.S. You usually have to go to Mexico to attain that service. Psilocybin as well. Actually, just journeyed with psilocybin last week. And it was a super, super deep journey. It's the first time I've really done it. And I was expecting it to be the same as ayahuasca. I was expecting to kind of be transported somewhere, but I wasn't. And I found myself, as I told you before, I started asking myself questions like my wife asked me time to time, how come you're not more affectionate? And, I was transported back to myself as a child and there was no affection in my family.
I
And
was
that's
going
why
to
I
ask
grew
you
up.
that whenever you said that, when you're like, my wife asked me, and I was going to ask you, do you think that's related to your childhood?
Yeah, 100%. There was little to no affection. You know, my I would kiss my parents hello and goodbye, but not too much I love yous. Never really hugging. I remember being like 8 or 9 years old. My cousins were over for Christmas, and my little cousin went and he was like massaging his mom's neck, gave her a kiss on her head, and I'm like, man, I wish I could do that. I just don't have that relation. I'm just not capable.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's who I grew up. And you know, several things with my father as to why I am the way I am in certain respects. And I went and I got answers. I saw myself. I was back in that house as a kid and saw the dynamics going on. And that's how you condition. I left the house at 25. And, maybe someone's natural question will be like, how come you don't do it now? Well, I don't know. I was programmed like that and doesn't come second nature. And I was telling you that I just did a podcast with Zach Ferguson, that former SEAL, yesterday, and I told him the story prior to us going live.
Hmm.
And he's like, bro, that's exactly how I am, man. He's like, my family, we were loving, but it was never I love yous and stuff like that. It wasn't that much affection. He's like, he'd tell my girlfriend, his girlfriend's there, throws the headphones on her. We had like a 10-minute talk. I'm like, it's not him. I go, unfortunately, we were raised like this. And again, natural question maybe, well, how come he doesn't do it? He's aware of it, but we have to consciously think about it sometimes.
Hmm.
I'm like, I love my wife. She's so affectionate to me, but sometimes I actually have to actively think to become more affectionate. Or sometimes when I'm super quiet, it's not that I'm like, trying to shut her out. It's just, that was my norm, man, for 25 years. My
This is
dad
a
being a
big
dad, my
thing for
mom in the
cops,
kitchen, my
man.
sister upstairs. Yeah, cops, one thing that I did not know in my 30-year career, the overwhelming majority of us did not have good relationships with our father growing up. And I don't know if it's because of that or in spite of that we go into these warrior cultures. But I think looking back now, man, I started lifting, I started fighting because I wanted to make myself into almost like a weapon where no one could hurt me. And you think it's mentally too. People could still,
Yeah.
no matter what you look like, I don't care, you're best fighter in the world. Your parents could still hurt you mentally.
Yeah.
But
I,
I think what we become because of that in certain respects.
yeah, I had a guy, one of the guys that our organization had served, and he reached out to me. My dad came from a really rough upbringing. His dad was not affectionate, very much the opposite of affectionate. Kind of beat him and stuff like that. And my dad I've always felt like my dad was really trying to be what his dad wasn't, if that makes
Yep.
sense.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
didn't really know it as a kid, but as I started to grow up, Joe Rogan has that thing of adults are just overgrown children. As
Yep.
I grew up and started to like try and analyze maybe why my childhood was this way or that way, or why my dad acted the way that he did, or maybe some of the decisions that he made that I may not have agreed with. Um, you know, um, it was my dad is a lot more loving than his dad, and he took a step in the right direction. But I had this cop reach out to me, and he's like, "Man, I'm just like, how are you able to like get on your level with your kids and be loving towards your wife, and how are you able to do those things?" I can't. He's like, because I'm a cop and because I'm always so on, I can never turn it off. I can't turn it off and be that other person. I can't be the joking, loving dad crawling on the floor. I got lucky, man. That comes natural to me. That's
Yep.
never been anything that I've ever had to like. I never struggled with it ever. And maybe it has to do with, I had a really, really strong relationship with my mom and when my dad was around, and um he was always, he's very playful and involved because I think he wanted that in his childhood and never got it, so he gave it to us.
Yeah.
Um, but again, I
Fantastic.
think a lot of that comes back to those like early childhood traumas that are like, you know, that makes you who you are. It makes you. That's the lens that you see the world through, and that you make your life decisions off of, things that happen to you unknowingly when
Yeah.
you're like 8 years old. And it seems so weird. My wife sees a fantastic counselor, and my wife was like, it always seems like she's trying to push it back to my childhood. So eventually we sat down, we had a conversation. She's like, because most trauma is somehow connected to like childhood trauma. Like the decisions that you're making now as an adult somehow relate back to the things that happened to you as a kid. And it seems like there's two things I noticed about your story with ayahuasca. One is you got emotional when you said, I'm not a cop anymore. Um, which I think was pretty interesting because it's something, as you're growing through your career, everybody always tells you don't find your identity in being a cop.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really freaking hard not to. because you go to work, you're with the boys all the time. Your job requires you to do a lot of stuff outside of work if you want to be good at your job. You still have to shoot, you still have to train, you still have to. For me, I bring a dog home with me every single day. My whole day revolves around that dog and making sure he's taken care of. So it's really, really hard, even though you're intentional about it sometimes, to not let being a cop become your identity. And it seems like the way that you exited the career really bothered you, you know?
Yeah, I didn't think it did, to be honest with you, until afterwards. And, it was actually after I healed, when I look back, I'm like, yeah, man, there was a lot more validity to what these guys have been saying over the years that I've heard. Um, it is hard, because you do try to separate. You don't want to be just the cop. You want to be Mike, and that's your job. But think about it. You go to a party. Hey, he's Matt. He's a cop. It's
Yeah.
it's constant. Everyone knows. They want to hear stories, and your identity just kind of gets wrapped up in that. And at some points, you love it too. And it's a phase of your life that's over. So you got to realize that too.
Yeah, and it changes you as a person. I mean, it really develops you, and it's the lens that you see the world through, and you have a different view from the rest of the world on what the world actually is and what it really looks like because of the things you experienced. So it's really hard not to change, not to tie up your identity in it. But
Yeah, 100%. And listen, we're grown men and maybe formidable, but we're still boys in some respects. And you're looking for that love. I just saw a documentary called "In Waves in War," and it's actually fantastic if you get a chance to watch it. It's the journey of DJ Shipley, Marcus Capone, and Matty Roberts, all Team Six guys coming back from war, broken men, and it shows them going through ibogaine healing journeys. But all three had very contentious relationships with their father growing up. And again, it's not really something I thought about until I retired. And you periodically talk about growing up, and guys talk about how tough their dads were. But now, when I speak to a man, I ask them how your relationship was with the dad, and the overwhelming majorities were not good. And so we suffered these traumas, so we have to give credence to the fact that this is something. This is concrete. In many cases, you still have to heal from that. Don't just blow that off, because you're a 240-pound jack dude that you don't need to heal from what you suffered as an 8-year-old kid. I remember walking in the house one day. My father was behind the door. I thought he was kidding around. I'm laughing. Dude punched me in the chest, knocked me across the room because he thought I was playing with a kid down the block I was supposed to be playing with. Like, stuff like that will come sometimes to the forefront. And listen, man, you still have to heal from stuff like that.
yeah, it's also the way that your brain is processing the things that you're dealing with now.
Yep.
Your brain is processing all the things that you have gone through in your career, all the things you compartmentalized and buried and not dealt with. And it's that same childhood brain, it's the same brain that you were figuring out how to problem solve and how to critically think as a little kid. That's the same brain that's trying to problem solve and critically think now. So, you're definitely, some of those childhood things are definitely tangled up in the rat's nest of a cop's brain.
Yeah, and sometimes you can't figure it out all yourself. I remember talking to, he's actually a year younger than me, but a mentor of mine. He's the guy that taught me how to fight. And we had a conversation about 6 months ago. I was going through some deep family drama, telling him what was going on. And not in a victim way, just telling him, as a matter of fact, what was going on. And he's like, Morgs, you got to remember, man, you're a warrior. He's like, you can never make yourself a victim because your mind is never going to reconcile it. He's like, you're not telling me a story as though you're a victim, but never, ever make yourself a victim. He goes, thank the universe. And this is the way I live my life since those 6 months, literally. And I will live my life like this for the rest of my life. Everything that I go through is for a purpose. And I thank the universe. It could be the most visceral pain. And, my mom since passed away since we had this talk, and that's the way I approached it. And we were estranged at the end of our life. But you must acknowledge it. You must feel it. You must heal from it. And again, it will make it a healthy, resilient individual who goes on to have healthy relationships and have a healthy outlook. You cannot dull it. You cannot bury it. Once you do, it's still there. It's not going anywhere until you process that pain.
At some point, you're going to have to face it. It's
Yeah,
you want to face it now when it's fresh in your mind and you can deal with it, or you want to bury it, go put another 25 traumatic incidents on top of it in 15
exactly.
years
Yeah,
and
I
then
mean
try and
that's
deal with it.
life. Life is
Yeah.
traumatic. You have the highest of highs, sometimes the lowest of lows. I love Sylvester Stallone and Rocky Balboa, that scene where he's talking to his son outside the restaurant, and he's like, "There's nothing that hits harder than life. I don't care how rich you are. I don't care how strong you are, how tough you are, how good looking you are, how funny you are. Does not matter. Life hits us all in the face, and you could either sit on that ground or you get your ass back up, dust off, and do what you have to do to heal and get back on with it. Because
Yeah.
life is a beautiful thing, man. But occasionally you'll get punched in the face.
Yeah, for sure. And the thing you said something, we're warriors, we're not victims. You go back and read, um, you know, ancient, Japanese text and Chinese text and all that, and they talk about in all of those they talk about how a warrior is truly balanced.
Yep.
And you can bring out that violence in me if you want. I don't want to bring it out, but sometimes it does have to. Violence is a reality of the things that we do.
Yeah.
But with that comes the other part of it, the balance of who I am as a person and what I want to be, and where I want my life to go, and it's my job, especially for my kids, man. And that's the big thing for me, my kids and my wife. It's not fair to my kids and my wife that I continue to go through things in my law enforcement career, drag them back to the house, and just throw them up all over my family.
Yeah.
So part of being a warrior is being willing to admit that you've done some things in your life and you need to address them in a way that's beneficial to you, so you can find that purpose in it, so you can use it to help other people, and so you can use it to drive yourself forward. But it starts with that acknowledgement, and it starts with realizing that you're different from most people, because we are, and that we need to take proactive steps to take care of ourselves. And that's really my big message, man. That's really, for me, going to see a culturally competent counselor has really helped. Cold plunging,
Yeah.
working out on a regular basis, communicating with my spouse in a more productive way, talking about it. That's why I had this podcast, is talking about it and being open and honest and not humiliated by the fact that I've went through things in my life and I have to deal with them, and being open and honest about them. Those are the things that have helped me. For other people, it may be ayahuasca. It may be, um, you know, it may be, picking up a new hobby or whatever the case may be, but it's our job as grown men and as police officers. If we want to be that warrior, it's our job to address these things and
Yeah.
to move forward,
No, absolutely. And there's a lot more awareness about the things that we have to do to keep mental health, um, straight these days. And just like you said, it doesn't matter what your modality of healing is, whether it be, religion, plant-based medicines, training or journaling or um, meditation. I mean, there's so many different things you could do.
or a
You have
mixture
to
of
talk
all
to
of them.
people. Yeah, yeah. Collectively, they're fantastic together. But you need to process this stuff, and a lot of times we hate asking for help. Um, and sometimes you don't even have to ask for help. I call my buddy, like I was just telling you, the mentor. I'm not asking him for help, just calling him up, like, what's up, brother? Can you got time? I need to just talk. So anyone will sit there that's truly your friend and listen to everything you have to say. You know who you can go to, who's going to give you good advice. And sometimes you don't even need advice, man. You just need to kind of get it off your chest
Yeah.
and speak. My first marriage, she was not that open emotionally, so it would have been more difficult. My wife now, like had I still been on the job, I could talk to her about anything, and she's fantastic. But whether it's your spouse, a good friend, a relative, a coworker, there's always someone in your life that you can go to and speak to. And for those of you that have guys like us in your lives, if you sense something is wrong, then it is. I guarantee your intuition is correct. And it's a hard talk to have. Matt and myself have asked people, and it's easy now because I've done it so many times.
Yeah.
Do you want to hurt yourself? Do you want to kill yourself? It's not a easy question for someone that's never asked someone. But if you think that something is going on in someone's life, and it doesn't have to be necessarily just a first responder or a vet, ask that person, man. You are not being nosy. Something is telling you that something's off with him. If you come up to me and Matt and you're like, "What's up?" And we're like, "All right, I'm all right." We're not all right. We're telling you without telling you that we want to kind of get it off our chest. You know, just pry a little bit further and be like, "Yo, bro, you want to talk, man? What's happening?" And see. And if you think they need help, don't dismiss it, because I guarantee you're right. That intuition, man, is great. And if you don't do anything and something happens to that person, you will regret it the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So, step up. It's not easy. I'll tell you right now. Again, Matt and I have done it too many times to count. Asking someone if they want to hurt themselves or commit suicide is a very tough question to ask, but you must ask it if you're feeling that that is a possibility.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why we started 1078, man, is because I know that cops aren't going to go out and ask for help. They're just not going to.
Yep.
It's just part of our person, man. We're hard-headed. It's the thing that makes us good at our job, is that we're willing to put ourselves aside to go do what we need to do. And, we bring that into our personal lives in certain aspects too. And that's the reason why, if we're notified of a shooting, it happens. We give you all of the resources. We take everything out of your hands. All you have to do is, if you want to see one of our counselors, or you get jujitsu and a gi for free for a month. You get to go to a gym.
Nice.
You get personal training for free. All of our counseling is free. So you reach out. You have their phone numbers. Literally, all you have to do is call one phone number. You don't have to go through some big EAP system. You don't have to answer all these questions. You call one phone number, they bring you in, they sit you down, and you guys start working on what's going on. Same's true for the spouse groups and everything else. And our goal is to make it as easy as possible, because I know cops and I know myself, and I know that when I wasn't feeling all that well, I didn't really I don't know what the right word is. I didn't really ask for anything. I just kind of sucked it up buttercup, like I've been told my entire career. I thought to myself, hey, this will go away. It'll get better. And a lot of times it doesn't. It just continues to compound. So,
yeah. Well, you're not even sure sometimes how to handle it, what's going on, who to reach out to. It's not like this is commonplace. It's not like you've talked about it so many times. Now you're in a different space, but when it first happened, it's totally different. It's funny because throughout my career, I've had a bunch of buddies who've gotten shootings and have killed people, and I've almost been a two myself. But I've always my head said kill him. One was the one I spoke to you about. The other one was the guy in PCP, but he dropped a pipe that he was about to try to hit me with. And I always wondered, I spent a lot of time thinking about, if I kill someone, like, how am I going to process this? Because I would see guys going through PTSD on good shoots, and I'm like, I cannot see myself feeling guilty about it. But you never know until you go through it, and that was the thing. I was aware of that too. Like, don't ever get this cocky attitude, like, that'll be shit, man, till you go through it. Then talk to me about how you processed it.
Yeah, there's a bunch of weird things that happen behind the scenes that a lot of people aren't, and until you go through one, you don't really know about, and I think that's kind of where it started for me. I don't want to say that I don't want to say that I really struggled with what had to happen, because, I had made that mental leap in my head from all the other things that I'd done in my career. But, being investigated, being the suspect, sitting across the chair from an investigator, I'm the good guy. I'm supposed to be the guy that's asking the questions. Why I'm on the opposite side of this.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of weird things that go on, man, that are just very, very bizarre, that really pull you out of your comfort zone, that, you're already going through something, and then all this stuff is added on top of it, makes it even weirder. Which leads to, at least for me, it led to, a struggle. I feel like I'm doing well. I feel like I'm on the opposite side of it. I feel like I've really taken my own mental health journey into my own hands, and I feel like I'm trying to be responsible about it. But like you said, there's ebbs and flows. Some days are better than other days. Most days are very good. But it's my job, for my family and for myself, to take control of that and make sure I'm hitting the gym, make sure I'm cold plunging, make sure I'm seeing the counselor, make sure I'm doing all of the other things that I need to do to make myself feel better, I guess. The
Yeah.
hobbies and the hunting and the doing all the other stuff that, like, when you're a cop, you don't have a lot of extra time, so you lose out on a lot of those things. And that's kind of my message out there to police wives is, if you're a police officer's wife and he's not home a lot, and he says he wants to go hunting or he says he wants to pick up another hobby, support him, because he needs those outlets. He needs
Absolutely.
positive things in his life that are unrelated to law enforcement. And for the cops out there, don't take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Don't ask too much of your spouse, because they go through enough, and they could have married a banker, but they decided to marry a cop, which isn't the easiest lifestyle, that's for sure.
Hell no. Yeah, absolutely. They go through everything we go through, even if we don't think so sometimes. We bring it home, even if we're not telling them what we're going through. They're going through it. They're with us on a daily, and it's not fair to them to shut them out.
Yeah. So where do people find you? How do people get in contact with you? Where can they follow you? Where can they support all of those things?
All right. So my Instagram is the Resilient Warrior 5778. I'm coming out with a podcast that's going to be dropping probably next week on YouTube. That's going to be the Resilient Warrior Nation. So between those two, obviously, if anyone wants to get in touch with me, hit me up on the Instagram. You'll get hit right back. I answer everything I get, and I thank anyone and everyone nationwide. I get DMs all the time now, and it's so humbling. People see my reels, and the fact that they trust me to ask them about helping them is like the most humbling thing. You're going through it with your organization and what you do. The fact that they trust me enough to start typing to me blows me away, and I will never take that for granted. And I do everything I can to help anyone that reaches out to me. So listen, you guys, I want to tell you, not alone if you're going through it. I went through it. There are probably hundreds of thousands of men and women going through it right now. It's temporary. There is help out there, but you have to raise your hand. Matt and I are not coming through your front door and throwing you over our shoulder and taking you for help. So it's incumbent upon you, if you need help, to raise your hand. And I promise you, it is out there. It's a vicious cycle, but it can be stopped. I went through it. I have a very happy life now. It is beautiful when you feel again, guys. I'm telling you.
Yeah, for sure, man. No truer words. The big thing that you just said is it's temporary.
Yep.
Now, how long that lasts, I can't promise you, but it is temporary. Well, we'll wrap this thing up, man. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Awesome.
Had a great time.
Yeah, for sure, dude. Anytime you need anything, feel free to reach out. But I appreciate you, and thanks for your time, bud.
Thank you.
What's up, guys? Thanks for hanging in there to the end of the episode. I hope you guys are enjoying Mike's story. If you can't tell, there's more from Mike. And until next week, I'll see you on the other side, boys.